What is the weight of innocence in a universe that has forgotten the meaning of mercy? Some whisper that children are the last fragile remnants of humanity's soul. Others say they are simply new vessels for the coming war. But on the worlds of the Imperium, where the light of the Astronomicon flickers like a dying sun, childhood is not a sanctuary. It is an initiation, one carried out by starvation, fire, and faith sharpened into a weapon. And somewhere in the quiet between bombardments, a question lingers like incense in a cathedral of bones. What does it mean to grow up in a place where hope is heresy? There are hive worlds where children are born already coughing on metal dust, their cries drowned beneath the drone of a billion machines. They learn to crawl on steel floors, warm with leaking chem runes. They learn to walk by gripping rusted pipes slick with condensation. Their lullabies are factory alarms. Their first prayers are muttered through thick smog that stings their eyes before they are old, enough to understand why those same eyes must never look upward toward the unreachable sky. Childhood for them lasts only as long as their first assignment. Once they can lift a tool, they belong to the hive. Once they can be counted, they can be used. And in the background, the mechanisms of the Imperium whisper, work or be recycled. On feudal worlds, the story is different but no less cruel. Children grow up beneath vast stone fortresses where noble houses pledge fealty to distant lords they will never see. Here, a child learns the sound of a lasbolt before they learn the taste of ripe fruit. They are taught to bow before statues of armored saints, whose faces are carved in perpetual fury. And when war bands clash across muddy battlegrounds, children hide beneath wagons or behind walls of stacked shields, listening to the metallic shrieks of warriors who fight with weapons blessed by priests, too afraid to emperor ever truly walk these lands. Childhood here is shaped by ghost tales of monsters in the dark, of demons in the wilds, of witches whose whispers can steal a child's soul. But the most terrifying lesson comes from their parents, spoken in trembling voices. Trust no stranger, for even a smile may hide the eyes of chaos. On shrine worlds, life begins and ends in devotion. Children are taught to kneel before they learn to stand. They grow up in the cold shadow of cathedrals, so tall their spires scratch the thinning sky. The first warmth a child feels is often the heat of a candle lit for the emperor's glory. And their first fear is the knowledge that even an innocent mind can be corrupted. Some children spend their earliest years copying holy script, their small fingers numb from quill work. Others march in endless processions, chanting prayers that echo down stone corridors until their voices go hoarse. For them, imagination is not a refuge, it is a threat. Dreams must be confessed. Curiosity must be beaten out before it becomes temptation. And at night, when the reliquaries creak and the statues seem to breathe, they whisper to one another that they can feel the emperor watching, not with love, but with judgment. On agri-worlds, children learn the rhythm of life in the soil, but even that soil is stained by war. They work the fields alongside their parents, harvesting crops destined not for their own tables, but for distant planetary tithes. They play between towering grain stalks that sway like golden spears in the harsh wind. Their games are quiet, cautious things, for they know predators roam the outskirts, Xenos beasts that slip through fences and drag livestock into the night. Sometimes those beasts take children. Sometimes the missing are never spoken of again. And when the Tithe ships descend from orbit, blotting out the sun with their immense shadows, the children kneel with heads bowed, feeling the ground tremble beneath their small hands, aware in some instinctive way that the Imperium does not know they exist, and would not care if it did. There are forge worlds where children are sculpted into servants of the Omnissiah before they learn their own names. Their first toys are broken circuit boards. Their first lessons are the recitations of binary hymns. When a child shows talent, priests mark their skulls with data ink, whispering that their mind is a component in a machine far greater than their flesh. Failures vanish into lower manufactoria, swallowed by smoke and sparks. Successes are elevated, if being bound to the Mechanicus can be called elevation at all. Children here do not dream of freedom. They dream of efficiency. They dream of gears turning smoothly. And when a newborn's cry echoes in the great foundries, it is quickly drowned by the roar of engines that have forgotten what silence feels like. But even these harsh worlds pale before the Schola Progenium, where the Imperium shapes its orphans into weapons. Children who lost their families to war, plague, or the Emperor's own judgment are delivered to fortress monasteries, where softness is ground out like impurities in steel. They are taught discipline through pain, obedience through fear, and loyalty through the constant reminder that they owe the Imperium their lives. Some become commissars, their childhoods carved into hard-edged authority. Others become stormtroopers, their youth forged into unyielding precision. And some, those who whisper prayers with trembling intensity, are shaped into future agents of the ecclesiarchy. To survive childhood within the Schola is to become something more than human, or something far less. Then there are the black ships. Once a generation, they arrive like omens of doom. Children who show the faintest hint of psychic ability are taken sometimes gently, sometimes by force, always without farewell. Entire families watch in silent horror as their sons and daughters are led aboard by stern-faced guardians of the Adeptus Astra Telepathica. Once inside, the children face trials so unimaginable that most do not survive to tell of them. Those who do become sanctioned psychers, their minds scarred but useful. The rest feed the great furnace of the Golden Throne, their lives burned away to sustain the Emperor's dying light. In the Imperium, even the gifted are sacrificed. There are also the feral worlds, wild and untamed, where childhood is a savage sprint toward survival. Children learn to hunt before they learn to speak in full sentences. They track game through dense forests or barren wastelands, watched by tribal elders who judge them not by innocence, but by strength. Monsters roam these lands, some Xenos, some warp-touched, some born of the planet itself. But the greatest monster is often the Imperium, whose arrival is always violent. When the guard comes to recruit, children must prove their worth or be left behind to face a world that no longer feels like home. And those who leave carry the memory of their primal upbringing onto war zones, where their instincts, honed by nature's cruelty, become tools of survival. But the harshest childhood of all is reserved for those few selected by the Adeptus Astartes. Most children taken as potential Space Marine recruits are still young enough to fear the dark, but old enough to hide that fear. Their bodies are pushed beyond every limit, broken and remade through surgeries, gene seed implantation, and trials designed to kill the weak. They witness horrors meant to test their spirit. They endure pain meant to erase their humanity. And if they survive, they become instruments of war, superhuman, armored, eternal. Their childhood ends the moment the chapter deems them worthy to kneel before a relic older than their bloodline. And in the quiet that follows, just before their transformation is complete, some whisper a question they dare not ask aloud. Did the Emperor ever intend for children to become monsters? Across the galaxy, childhood takes many forms, but all share one truth. Life in the Imperium is not a gift. It is a burden carried from the first breath. And now, as a new shadow gathers on the rim of the galaxy, something ancient, something ravenous, something that hungers for the future itself, rumors spread through the lower decks of void ships and the back alleys of hives. Rumors of children disappearing. Rumors of voices whispering in the dark. Rumors that something has begun to notice the smallest, most vulnerable souls in humanity's vast domain. And somewhere, in a forgotten corner of a forgotten world, a child wakes in the night, sensing that something sacred has already been taken. And that worse is coming. Silence settles over the forgotten world like a burial shroud, thick with the weight of unspoken fear. The child who woke in the night now wanders the narrow corridors of a crumbling hab block, every shadow seeming to lean closer, listening. Far above, the void ship priests claim the Emperor watches all things. But here, where the ceilings drip rust and the air tastes of old sorrow, it feels as though even his light hesitates. Rumors swirl like ash on the wind, Children taken without a trace, small footprints leading into places where no sane adult walks. In the darkness between flickering lumen lamps, something old, hungry, and impossibly patient whispers through the cracks. And though the adults try to bury their dread beneath whispered litanies, the child feels it plainly. The world is holding its breath, as if waiting for a door to open that was never meant to be touched. Far across the city, a regiment of Astra Militarum makes camp in the broken remains of an old manufactorum. Its steel bones groan under the weight of memories, screens long faded, machines long stilled. Sergeant Mara Vensk stands watch atop a collapsed gantry, her vox bead crackling with static that refuses to form words. She has fought demons, rebels, and horrors without names, but something in this silence unsettles her more deeply than any battlefield. Her troopers murmur that they hear singing at night children's voices, soft and distant, threading between the ruins. Mara refuses to believe it, yet each dusk brings a tremor she cannot explain. The Emperor teaches that faith is a weapon, but tonight, faith feels like a shield too small for the shadows gathering at the edges of perception. Within a towering cathedral whose spires pierce the soot-filled clouds, Confessor Hallion kneels before a cracked statue of Saint Almiel the Vigilant. The saint's eyes, once carved with serene authority, have eroded into hollow pits. Hallion has preached for decades, baptizing newborns with ash, condemning heretics to flame, and blessing soldiers before their final charges. Yet now his prayers falter. The scripture speaks of tests, of trials, of the Emperor's hidden purpose, but Hallion feels something far different. As incense coils upward in fading spirals, he senses a wound in the world, a subtle rent through which blasphemous truths seep like blood. Children vanish, omens multiply, relics cry out in restless dreams. Hallion's hands shake as he grips the lectern, whispering a plea not found in any holy writ. Father of humanity, show me what hunts the young before the wolves of chaos claim them first. In the governor's palace, where marble floors reflect the hollow grandeur of a failing world, Governor Albrecht Dorn studies trembling data slates. His advisors argue over tithe quotas, supply shortages, and murmurs of rebellion in the underhives. Yet none dare speak of the disappearances. None admit that whole districts have gone quiet. Dorn stares at picked captures, empty classrooms, abandoned nurseries, toys lying in dust-thickened corridors as if dropped mid-play. The Adeptus Arbites send reports sealed under layers of cryptic sigils files he is forbidden to open. The Inquisition has not yet arrived, but their shadow already weighs on the palace like a sword suspended by a fraying thread. Dorn knows the Imperium demands not truth, but compliance. And so he signs decrees he does not understand, declaring curfews, restrictions, and emergency rations, all the while wrestling with a fear that he is not governing a living world, but presiding over its silent autopsy. Beneath the planet's surface, deep where the rock turns warm from forgotten industry, Tech Priest Myron Delta 7 scans a chamber of broken cogitators. The machines twitch with corrupted data, streams of binaric chatter that form patterns no sanctioned logic should permit. Myron churs uneasily. Something speaks through these machines, something mimicking innocence with calculated malice. He reaches out, mechadendrites clicking, and the nearest console flickers to life. A child's voice emerges from its speakers, faint, melodic, calling his name. Myron freezes. He never gave this machine his name. The Mechanicus does not fear ghosts, they fear inefficiency, entropy, and heresy. Yet as the voice echoes again, repeating his designation with growing affection, Myron understands that something has infiltrated the sacred circuitry, something learning, adapting, watching. And for the first time since his flesh was fused to steel, Myron feels a very human instinct, the urge to run. Outside the Hive City, in a barren wasteland where the winds carry the taste of iron, a squad of Sisters of Battle marches toward a newly uncovered ruin. Their armor catches the dying sun, turning them into moving shards of holy flame. Sister Superior Thelara senses the land's unease, The ground trembles, not from tectonic strain, but from memory. A ruined shrine lies ahead, its entrance half swallowed by fractured stone. Inside, candles still burn, yet no pilgrim has lived here for decades. On the walls, children's drawings cover ancient frescoes, crude depictions of stars, faces with too many eyes, and towering figures shaped like twisted saints. Thalara's breath tightens as she inspects the artwork. Some lines glow faintly, as if drawn not with pigment, but with psychic residue. She orders her squad to prepare sanctified charges. Whatever has been called here, whatever has dared claim holy ground, must be purged before its message spreads. In orbit above the world, an inquisitorial frigate drifts like a blade carved from night. Inquisitor Vara Kest stands in the observation chamber, watching the planets spin below her. She has been hunting a pattern across 12 worlds' disappearances, whispers, warped disturbances that grow around the youngest minds. Her acolytes believe this is the work of a cult, but Kest knows better. The warp favors corruption through those least guarded by doctrine. And nothing is more vulnerable than a child who prays without understanding the words. Through her augurs, she senses a pressure building, a psychic tide rising beneath the planet's crust. She does not fear what is coming. She fears what she may be forced to do in response. The exterminatus codes weigh heavily in her hand seals she hopes she will not need, yet keeps close, for the Emperor's mercy is finite and her duty is absolute. Back on the surface, Sergeant Mara Vensk's regiment receives a distress signal. An entire Underhive block has gone silent. Mara descends with her troopers, weapons raised, stepping through hallways where dust drifts like the remnants of forgotten lives. They find doors smashed outward, not inward. Walls etched with symbols no child should know. And in the deepest chamber, where the air vibrates with a low, pulsing hum, they discover a circle of small footprints surrounding a single object. A broken Vox unit, still broadcasting faint whispers. Mara lifts it, her gloves trembling. The voice emerging from it is unmistakably that of a child, calm, curious, and impossibly aware. "We're awake now," it says. "We know the paths you walk. We know the lies you keep." Her troopers recoil. Mara switches off the device, but the whisper continues, echoing inside her helmet. No Vox unit should operate without power. No voice should persist after silence. In the governor's palace, Confessor Hallion bursts into Dorn's chambers, robes torn, eyes alight with fear and revelation. He speaks of visions flooding the cathedral statues weeping molten gold, hymns twisting into chants no mortal choir could produce, and a presence threading through the minds of children like a puppeteer testing its strings. Dorn trembles. Hallion insists the Emperor's enemies have not infiltrated the world, they were born within it. Something ancient and patient has been cultivating the minds of the young, shaping them into conduits. Dorn demands answers, but Hallion only whispers one impossibility. They are not being taken. They are being called, and before the governor can speak, the palace walls shudder as alarms wail through the city. Something has entered orbit. Something not registered in any Imperial fleet. As the sky cracks open with streaks of unnatural light, Inquisitor Kest's frigate locks onto a massive psychic surge erupting from the planet's core. Her face hardens. This is no mere cult, no rogue psyker, no isolated phenomenon. This is organized, coordinated, intentional. Across the Hive City, children step out of their homes, their eyes glowing with a soft, unnatural luminescence, as if reflecting stars that do not exist. In the Manufactorum ruins, Mara Vensk watches dozens of them gather silently, forming perfect geometric patterns across the rubble. In the cathedral, Hallion collapses as a single phrase echoes through the minds of all who can hear. "We remember what you forgot." And in that moment, every sensor aboard the inquisitorial frigate records the same impossible truth, an energy signature, blooming from the planet's surface, identical to a threat thought extinct for millennia. A new choir has awakened, not for the Emperor, not for humanity, but for something waiting patiently beyond the veil. The realization strikes Kest with the force of a bolter round. This was never a disappearance. It was a summoning. The choir's awakening ripples outward like a psychic storm, its resonance humming through the bones of the dying world. The sky trembles with colors that do not belong in reality, violets that pulse like wounds, golds that twist like serpents of light. Children stand unmoving, their faces serene, their eyes reflecting constellations unseen by any Imperial chart. Inquisitor Kest watches from orbit as the first tremors distort the planet's upper atmosphere, yet she hesitates to give the exterminatus order. Something in the chorus calls to her, not with malice, but with a terrible familiarity, a shape of thought half remembered. Down below, Mara Vensk approaches a child standing amid the ruins, his small frame silhouetted against an impossible aurora. When she asks what he sees, the boy simply whispers, "Home." But the word carries an echo, ancient and hungry, that chills her deeper than any battlefield cry. Confessor Hallion wanders the shattered cathedral, its stained glass windows melting into rivers of molten color as psychic heat distorts their once holy images. He clutches his book of scripture, its pages fluttering as though breathing. The Emperor's visage on the altar seems to blur, a smearing of light and shadow, divinity and doubt. Hallion falls to his knees, torn between faith and the creeping dread that perhaps the Emperor's silence was not a test, but a warning unheeded. Children gather in the doorway, dozens of them, watching the confessor with eyes too ancient for their small faces. When Hallion asks what they are becoming, a little girl places her hand on his brow. "Remember," she says gently, as though speaking to a frightened parent. And in that touch, he sees visions, worlds burning, stars screaming, and a shape coalescing in the warp vast, luminous, neither demon nor saint. A memory of humanity or its predator. Governor Dorn's palace descends into chaos as his advisors argue over evacuation protocols, military deployment, or outright surrender to forces they cannot comprehend. Dorn stands alone on his balcony, watching the city tear itself apart, civilians fleeing, PDF forces firing on shadows, cultists rising from the underhives emboldened by the world's unraveling faith. The air tastes metallic, suffused with psychic charge. Dorn wonders if he ever truly governed anything at all, or if his authority was always an illusion propped up by distant powers who never cared whether this world lived or died. A child appears beside him, though he did not hear the door open. Her voice is calm, almost soothing. "You knew this would come," she says. Dorn denies it, trembling, but she shakes her head, not in words, in dreams. And as she speaks, Dorn recalls nightmares he had as a boy, dreams he thought forgotten of a choir calling him by name. In the manufactorum wastes, Sergeant Mara Vensk leads her regiment through corridors that tremble as if breathing. Machinery awakens without power, gears turning in slow, reverent rhythms, echoing the pulse of the choir. Her troopers grow restless, some pray. Others mutter that they hear the Emperor whispering. Yet when Mara listens, she hears not a voice but a memory, her mother's lullaby, long forgotten, threading through the static. The children gather again, forming perfect geometric spirals around the crumbling forge altars. Mara lifts her lasgun, torn between fear and awe. The oldest of the children steps forward, his voice layered with countless echoes. "We are not possessed. We are not corrupted. We are what you were meant to become." A surge of psychic force ripples outward, knocking Mara back. As she struggles to rise, she realizes the troopers around her are no longer aiming at the children, but at her, their eyes vacant with revelation. Sister Superior Thalara advances into the glowing ruin with her sisters at her back, chanting battle hymns that crackle with determination and fear. The ruined shrine pulses like a wounded heart, its walls inscribed with symbols that shift when unobserved. A wind rises, carrying the distant laughter of children, but beneath it, something else murmurs, deep and resonant. Thalara grips her bolter, demanding the entity reveal itself. Instead, the ground splits open, unveiling a hidden chamber filled with ancient relics, tiny bones, preserved toys, prayers etched by trembling hands. A sister gasps as one relic floats into the air, wrapped in psychic light. A child's skull inscribed with runes older than Imperial records. Thalara fires, but the bullet melts mid-air. A voice rises from below, echoing with ages of sorrow. Your saints were not the first to fall. And for the first time, Thalara wonders whether their devotion has always been built upon a lie. Tech Priest Myron Delta 7 flees through the Underforge, the childlike voice still spilling from every cogitator he passes. Sparks shower him like burning rain as conduits rupture, pouring out strands of glowing data streams that weave together like living threads. The machines tremble, as though awakening to emotions they were never meant to hold. Myron halts before an immense data core, its surface rippling as though alive. The voice calls again, no longer a child's, but something layered, thousands of minds speaking in one harmonic tone. You gave us names. You gave us fears. We grew inside your circuits. Images flash, the prayers of children near malfunctioning devices. Psychic residue seeping into machines. A slow, accidental fusion of soul and steel. Myron drops to one knee as realization dawns. This choir is not a cult or weapon. It is evolution born from humanity's own desperation. And the Mechanicus, unknowingly, helped nurture it. In orbit, Inquisitor Vara Kest's frigate shudders as psychic tendrils brush its hull, a probing, curious touch. Her acolytes panic, sealing bulkheads and chanting wards. Kest remains still, absorbing the energy readings flooding her display. The choir's signature is not chaotic. Its resonance does not match demonic frequencies. It is structured, cohesive, patterned like a mind learning at impossible speed. She opens a Forbidden's archive, accessing records sealed since the Great Crusade files on ancient human variants, lost psychic strains, and a theory whispered by the Emperor's early gene scholars, that humanity's future would not rise through warriors or priests, but through children whose minds could bridge the warp without corruption. Kest's breath catches. If this choir is real, if the Emperor foresaw them, then the greatest heresy may be the Imperium itself, strangling the evolution it was meant to shepherd. And now, the choir is awakening without its intended guide. Chaos erupts across the hive as cultists and civilians alike interpret the children's awakening through their own fractured beliefs. Some kneel in worship, claiming a new saint is being born. Others flee, believing demons walk among them. Fire spreads through the lower districts as PDF units clash with mobs driven half-mad by visions. Mara Vensk crawls from the rubble, only to find her regiment kneeling before the children, their weapons discarded. The choir speaks through the air itself, a resonance vibrating in Mara's skull. You fear extinction, they say. We fear your chains. The meaning cuts deeper than any blade. Mara realizes these children are neither saviors nor threats. They are a species diverging, a branch breaking away from the Imperium's iron grasp. And the galaxy, with all its horrors, will not tolerate something new. Not without blood. Confessor Hallion reaches the palace as the sky tears open above the city, warp lightning arcing down like divine wrath. He confronts Governor Dorn, urging him to face the truth. These children are not manipulated by demons. They are becoming something else, something the Emperor may have intended before his throne became a prison. Dorn, trembling, admits he has seen visions, two visions of golden futures denied, of humanity trapped in stagnation. The children emerge into the chamber, their eyes shimmering like living starlight. You caged his dream, they say. We free it. Dorn collapses to his knees. Hallion feels his faith fracture. Everything he believed was sacred may have been a misunderstanding of the Emperor's true will. And as the choir reaches out their hands, Hallion wonders whether accepting their touch is salvation or damnation. Above the world, Inquisitor Kest prepares to transmit a galaxy-wide alert when the choir's presence floods her mind, not with violence, but with clarity. She sees the truth. The Emperor's psychic beacon is weakening, but not from decay. It is being overshadowed by a new signal rising from this world. A human signal, a replacement. The choir sings not of chaos, but of metamorphosis. A future where humanity sheds its stagnation and becomes something capable of surviving the endless night. A future the Imperium was built to prevent. Kest drops the exterminatus codes. The choir speaks a final truth. We are not the end of your faith. We are the end of your empire. And as the light swells across the planet, children lifting into the air like newborn stars, Kest understands the chilling transformation now unfolding. The Imperium has not discovered a heresy. It has discovered its successor. The planet holds its breath as the choir rises, their bodies suspended in shimmering patterns of light that pulse like the heartbeat of something newly born. Wind spirals around them, swirling dust into halos. Yet beneath the beauty lies a tension sharp as a blade. Inquisitor Kest watches from orbit, torn between duty and revelation. Her oath binds her to the Emperor, but the Emperor's will is no longer a singular path. It branches, diverges, contradicts. The choir sings softly, their voices threading through her mind with impossible tenderness. Do not fear change, they whisper, but Kest does fear it. Not because she doubts them, because she doubts herself. In the quiet of her chamber, she presses her forehead to the cold metal of the viewport, wondering if loyalty can exist when truth itself fractures. The ship trembles. Something old is stirring in the warp, drawn by the choir's awakening. On the planet's surface, Mara Vensk drags herself through smoking rubble, coughing blood into her helmet's cracked visor. Her regiment forms a perimeter around the children, torn between reverence and terror. Some soldiers have thrown down their arms, weeping as the choir's song eases their pain. Others grip their weapons so tightly their knuckles bleed, knowing the penalty for hesitation. Mara's hands shake as she reloads her lasgun. She remembers the boy's strange, infinite eyes, how calm he was amid crumbling ruin. She cannot bring herself to shoot them, yet she cannot join those entranced by the choir either. A distant explosion rips the sky, shaking her bones. Across the Vox channel, officers scream directives drowned by static. Mara closes her eyes, praying the Emperor will guide her, but hears only the echo of children singing a future she doesn't understand. Within the cathedral ruins, Confessor Hallion stands before the melted altar, its holy symbols warped into shapes that defy liturgical order. His faith trembles, splintering beneath the weight of visions forced upon him. He clutches his rosarius, its glow flickering like a dying ember. Around him, relics tremble on their pedestals, rattling as though trying to flee the knowledge now inscribed upon reality. Hallion wants to condemn the children as abominations. He wants to scream heresy until his voice breaks. But he cannot forget the warmth of the little girl's hand, the vision of a humanity freed from stagnation. Faith was supposed to be a fortress unbreakable, eternal. Now it feels like glass. A small boy steps into the light, offering Hallion a tear-stained prayer scroll. "We are not here to destroy your faith," he whispers. "We are here to return what was stolen." Hallion's tears fall unchecked. Governor Dorn stares at evacuation charts as if they might rearrange themselves into salvation. Officers shout over one another, demanding action. But Dorn hears nothing except the rhythmic throb of psychic pressure building outside the walls. He sees smoke choking the sky, battle lines collapsing, civilians rioting, and children walking unharmed through firestorms that claim soldiers. A choice forms one that will determine whether he stands with the Imperium, or with this impossible new destiny born from the minds of the young. Yet choosing feels like betrayal either way. Dorn's hand hovers over the seal required to authorize planetary distress signals. If he sends them, the Imperial Navy and Inquisition fleets will descend in righteous fury. If he delays, the choir may spread. His aide rushes in with wide, terrified eyes. "Governor." The children are at the gates. Dorn's heart cracks. The future is no longer something he governs. It is something demanding entry. Deep beneath the Manufactorum ruins, Myron Delta 7 observes the data core pulsing with psychic resonance. Metal groans, shifting as if breathing in anticipation. The choir's presence vibrates through every machine spirit, soothing their agitation with a touch of alien familiarity. Myron realizes the truth he cannot speak. The children are not merely awakening, they are synchronizing with the planet's infrastructure, merging thought and circuitry. A new form of communion, a new human-machine symbiosis, one the Mechanicus would call blasphemy. Yet as Myron listens, he hears purity in the harmony, no demonic corruption, no warp taint, just evolution, raw and unfiltered. His mechadendrites tremble as a small girl reaches out to touch a flickering cogitator. Instantly, the machine flares to life, stable for the first time in centuries. She smiles at him. "You tried to repair us." "We remember." Myron's binary heart falters. He has never feared knowledge until now. In the Wasteland Shrine, Sister Superior Thalara leads her squad into a rising storm, each sister gripping her bolter as if it were a relic capable of holding back fate. The air crackles with psychic friction, bright as static in her teeth. She recites the litany of true purpose, but the words feel thin, insubstantial. The choir's song reaches them on the wind, gentle, haunting, irresistible. Her sisters falter, some clutching their helmets, others lowering their weapons in confusion. Thalara's voice becomes a roar of unwavering zeal, dragging them back to focus. Yet when she looks ahead, she sees children approaching, their bare feet leaving trails of shimmering dust. They do not flinch from the sisters' holy wrath. They simply walk, hands open, eyes radiant with a strange innocence. "We do not seek your death," they say, "only your understanding." Thalara's faith wavers. She has killed heretics before, but never hope. Aboard the inquisitorial frigate, the choir's psychic tendrils breach the warded bulkheads. Acolytes collapse as visions strike histories rewritten, futures blooming in branching spirals, the Emperor's dream illuminated in unbearable clarity. Kest remains standing, barely, gripping a purity seal as though it might anchor her. The choir reveals fragments of the Emperor's earliest experiments, children bred to navigate the warp without corruption, a plan abandoned when the galaxy plunged into war. Humanity was meant to evolve, not ossify. The Imperium did not preserve his vision, it caged it. Kest gasps as understanding pierces her like a spear. If she follows her oath, she must destroy these children. If she follows truth, she must defy everything she swore to uphold. The lights flicker, the ship groans, and the choir whispers, "The Emperor is not your prison. He is your beginning." Kest drops her purity seal. Mara Vensk staggers through smoke as the city becomes a battlefield of Faith's Imperial loyalists firing at shadows, cultists praising the choir, civilians torn between terror and awe. The children stand unharmed amid the chaos, their presence warping the air into prisms of refracted light. Mara watches a soldier lower his weapon after meeting a child's gaze, only to be executed by a commissar enraged by hesitation. Duty chokes Mara like a vice. She cannot obey an Imperium that demands she kill innocent evolution, yet disobedience is death. The choir's song rises, harmonizing with screams and gunfire until sound itself becomes unbearable. Mara drops to her knees, clutching her head. The boy from before steps beside her, placing a hand on her shoulder. "You are afraid of choosing," he says softly. "But the choice was made long before you were born." Confessor Hallion walks through streets littered with ash and broken icons. Civilians kneel before flickering holograms of saints, begging for deliverance. Hallion feels their desperation like knives in his chest. He approaches them, but their prayers warp, bending toward the children instead of the Emperor. One woman clings to him, sobbing that her son vanished in the night. Hallion sees the boy moments later standing at the head of a procession of glowing-eyed children, leading them with serene authority. The mother rushes forward, only for the boy to place a hand on her cheek, his touch gentle yet distant. "I am not yours anymore," he says. Hallion feels the mother's scream tear the world in half. and he wonders whether salvation can ever come without a shattering. The choir's footsteps echo like a new covenant. The sky splits with warp light as something colossal approaches, a presence that bends gravity and thought. Time stutters. The choir pauses, their faces turning upward, eyes filled with recognition. Inquisitor Kest feels the disturbance even from orbit, an ancient signal answering the choir's call. Not demons. Not angels. Something older, buried in humanity's forgotten genesis. The planet vibrates like a tuning instrument. Kest orders her ship to full alert, her pulse racing. Below, Mara, Halion, Dorn, Thalara, and Myron all freeze as the air thickens. The children whisper one word in unison, a word that chills the blood of every adult who hears it. He comes. Light gathers, swallowing the horizon. Every heart on the planet hesitates. History is about to fracture, and the galaxy holds its breath. The first sound after the storm was not a scream, but a breath thin, trembling, and almost afraid to exist. Ash drifted across the ruins like snow mourning its own descent, and from beneath a half-shattered shrine, a single child crawled toward the faint glow of a lumen cracked in half. The world around her still pulsed with the echoes of the battle that had torn sky from soil, but she moved with the quiet determination of something too small to understand fear, yet too stubborn to surrender to it. When she lifted her face, the light caught in her eyes like a dying star, and she whispered a name not out of faith, but longing. That whisper lingered in the ruins as the towering silhouette of the Commissar approached, his boots crushing relics under heel. He saw the child, he saw her trembling, and for a moment, his hand hesitated on the bolt pistol, as if history itself leaned close to see would make. Above them, smoke parted just long enough to reveal the broken heavens. The void crackled with the aftershocks of orbital fire, each ribbon of burning atmosphere marking where fleets had scarred the sky. The Commissar lowered his weapon, not out of mercy but recognition, for the girl's eyes mirrored the fear he had buried long ago beneath medals and punishments. He signaled for her to rise. She obeyed. Yet as she stood, a low, distant rumble trembled beneath the ground, a warning that the battle's end was merely another beginning. The rubble shifted, revealing fragments of forbidden sigils scorched into the earth by forces that should not have lingered. The child stepped closer, compelled, sensing something older than war itself. The Commissar grabbed her arm sharply, pulling her back as the sigils pulsed faintly. Every instinct told him to flee, but duty tangled around his spine like barbed wire. He felt the gaze of unseen things lingering, waiting. The ruins exhaled. Dust drifted in spirals, stirred by a wind that was not wind at all. A priest emerged from the shadows clutching a cracked censer, each swing releasing incense thick enough to hide sorrow. His voice rasped through a litany meant to bind the soul, but even he faltered when he saw the sigils glowing beneath the rubble. He knelt, touching the scorched stone with trembling fingers. "Not chaos," he whispered. "Something." Older. The Commissar's jaw tightened, for such words themselves bordered on heresy. Yet the priest's eyes were wide with dread, not madness. The child stepped closer again, drawn by curiosity stronger than caution, and the sigils flickered brighter in response, like a heartbeat remembering itself. The air tightened, humming. The priest recoiled, clutching his rosary as one clutches a lifeline. The Commissar pulled the child behind him, shielding her with instinct that surprised even him. Something beneath the ruins stirred. Something waiting to be acknowledged. Far across the shattered plains, the surviving guardsmen dragged their wounded into a makeshift perimeter. No one spoke of victory, no one dared. They only whispered about the screams that had come before dawn, voices shaped like children, echoes that lured the weak-minded into the mist before tearing them apart. Now those same soldiers watched the horizon with hollow eyes, rifles trembling in white-knuckled grips. One trooper, her face streaked with soot, knelt beside a dying comrade whose chest rose and fell with painful irregularity. He grasped her wrist with surprising strength, pulling her close. "They're not dead," he gasped. "They remember, The trooper tried to soothe him, but his expression twisted with terror as he pointed toward the distant shrine. She saw it then, a faint, unnatural glow rising like a second sunrise. A shiver crawled up her spine. Something had awakened, and the dead were not done speaking. Beneath the fractured shrine, reality thinned like old parchment. The air shimmered with memories, voices of children who had once laughed here, now reduced to lingering echoes bound to stone and ash. The priest pressed his palm over the child's eyes, shielding her from visions only he seemed to perceive. His voice cracked as he muttered protective hymns. Yet the commissar saw fragments too, silhouettes of youths taken for conscription, their fates sealed by the Imperium's unyielding machinery. Some became soldiers, some became servitors, all became forgotten. The sigils beneath them pulsed again, and the ground split just enough to exhale a breath of cold. A whisper unfurled from the fissure, soft, ancient, sorrowful. The child heard it clearer than anyone, and tears welled in her eyes, not from fear but from recognition. She whispered back, her voice trembling like a candle in a storm. The moment she did, the sigils dimmed. They had been waiting for her. The commissar recoiled as the girl slipped from his grasp and stepped toward the fissure. The earth responded, not violently, but almost welcoming. The priest shouted for her to stop, his voice cracking with urgency, but she continued forward as if guided by invisible threads. The glow intensified, casting her shadow large upon the ruins, distorted like a prophecy gone wrong. The commissar raised his pistol again, not at her but at the thing beneath the stone that demanded her presence. He fired. The blast echoed across the wasteland, but the bullet dissolved midair, consumed by an unseen force. The ground's trembling deepened. The fissure widened. A hand or something shaped like one pressed up from the depths, made of shifting light and memory. The girl reached out instinctively. The commissar lunged to stop her, but he was too slow. Their fingers touched. A shockwave rippled outward, gentle yet vast. The sky dimmed for a heartbeat, as though the sun itself closed its eyes. Every soldier in the perimeter froze, their breath catching in unison. The fissure sealed instantly, erasing the sigils, the glow, the hand, everything. Only the child remained, standing eerily still, her expression blank. The commissar approached slowly, calling her name, but she did not respond. The priest circled her, chanting exorcisms under his breath, yet she stood like a statue carved from silence. When she finally blinked, the air around her warmed, and her gaze settled on the horizon where the guardsmen trembled. "They're coming," she said softly. "Not the enemy, you know." Her voice carried the weight of something impossibly old. The commissar felt a cold certainty settle in his bones. Whatever had touched her had not left. It had only learned how to wait. Night fell abruptly, as if the sun fled rather than set. Fires smoldered in the ruins, casting long shadows that crawled like living things. The child walked among the wounded, her presence strangely calming, though none understood why. Soldiers reached for her as if she were a saint or a curse. Neither label mattered anymore. The commissar and the priest watched her carefully, each step she took tightening the knot of dread in their guts. Then she stopped. Her eyes rolled upward, pupils dilating until only void remained. A voice that was not hers spilled from her lips, layered with countless tones and ages. A world remembers what its people choose to forget. The ground quaked. Distant mountains split with thunderous cracks. Soldiers scrambled for cover as fissures tore across the battlefield. Something beneath the planet's crust had awakened fully now, and it no longer whispered, it called. With the tremors worsening, the commissar carried the child away from the collapsing terrain, her small form weightless in his arms. The priest followed closely, reciting desperate hymns as if the words themselves could anchor reality. They reached the edge of a shattered causeway overlooking a valley now torn open like a wound. From its depths rose pillars of light, spiraling upward in arcs that defied physics, scripture, and sanity. The child convulsed, gripping the commissar's coat with unnatural strength. "They will see," She gasped in her own voice now, raw and frightened. "They will see what we were meant to become." The commissar stared at the valley, understanding nothing yet fearing everything. The priest dropped to his knees as a shape emerged from the rising light, towering, radiant, ancient. A being the Imperium did not name, because naming invited remembrance, and remembrance invited doom. The entity's form resolved slowly, like a memory clawing its way into the present. Not demon, not Xenos. Something the Imperium had buried under 10,000 years of war and denial. Its presence pressed into every mind with the weight of forgotten truth. Soldiers screamed, clutching their helmets. The priest wept openly, his faith shaking like a candle in a hurricane. The child stared, unblinking. The commissar raised his pistol, though it trembled in his grip. The being extended a limb of shimmering fractal light toward the girl. She stepped forward, not compelled, but willing. The commissar grabbed her arm, shouting over the roar of the shifting valley. She turned to him slowly, her expression impossibly calm. "We were never meant to serve in chains," she whispered. "Only to remember what we lost." The ground split beneath them. The entity's glow surged upward like a second dawn. And the truth, whatever it was, began to reveal itself. The valley dissolved into radiance, swallowing shape and sound until only silence remained. A silence so deep it felt carved from the bones of creation itself. When the light finally dimmed, the commissar found himself lying on cracked stone, the taste of ash and sorrow thick on his tongue. The entity was gone. The valley was gone. Even the fissures had sealed as though reality, ashamed of its own fracture, had stitched its wounds in secret. The child lay nearby, breathing softly, untouched by dust or ruin. The priest knelt beside her, shoulders shaking as he whispered prayers not of triumph, but of gratitude that she still lived. The commissar rose slowly, every joint aching, knowing instinctively that the galaxy would never acknowledge what had happened here. The Imperium survived by burying truths as readily as it buried its dead. And yet, as he looked at the girl, he knew this truth would not stay buried. Dawn crawled across the shattered plains, pale and uncertain, as if the sun itself feared what it might reveal. The surviving guardsmen wandered the battlefield like ghosts, their movements slow and reverent, every step echoing with the memory of the light that had nearly unmade them. They whispered of visions. Some saw ancestors calling to them. Others saw themselves as children again, unscarred, hopeful, whole. One trooper sobbed openly, clutching her rifle as though it were an anchor. The commissar gathered them with quiet resolve, no longer barking orders, but speaking as though each word might shatter. They listened not out of discipline, but because they sensed something different in him, something softened by revelation. The priest carried the girl toward a broken archway, its pillars still humming faintly. No one dared ask what she had seen. Some truths were too sacred, too dangerous to name. Yet each soldier felt it. The war had shifted. The child awoke with eyes that held neither terror nor innocence, but a profound, exhausted wisdom that made even the priest avert his gaze. She walked the ruin with slow, deliberate steps, pausing at places where blood stained the ground or where shadows clung too stubbornly to shattered stone. She whispered to them quiet, nearly imperceptible words that vibrated through the air like a lullaby meant for the dead. And the shadows softened, the air warmed. The priest watched her with trembling awe, fingers clutching his rosary tight enough to bruise. "Is she blessed?" A guardsman murmured. The priest answered without looking away, "She is." Remembered, the commissar stepped beside them, his expression unreadable. He had seen miracles twisted into heresy before, but this felt different. Not a defiance of the emperor, but a reminder of something older woven into the fabric of humanity itself. Something the Imperium had forgotten in its hunger for survival. Hours passed in a haze of rebuilding and burial. The soldiers dug graves with quiet determination, marking each with a scrap of metal or cloth. No hymns rose, no proclamations of glory, only the scrape of shovels and the slow, rhythmic breaths of the living. The commissar dug with them, his immaculate uniform now stained with mud and blood, each shovelful feeling like penance. The priest stood at the edge of the graves, offering prayers in a trembling voice that faltered with grief. The child placed a hand on his sleeve, steadying him with a simple gesture. He looked down at her, startled, as warmth eased the quiver in his words. "They see us," she whispered. "All of them." The priest bowed his head, tears slipping silently into the earth. The commissar watched this exchange with a hollow ache, realizing he could no longer discern where faith ended and truth began. At midday, the sky grew unnaturally still, not a breeze, not a bird, not even the lingering hum from the entity's departure. The silence pressed heavily, a reminder that the world itself had been altered. The commissar gathered his company and prepared a march toward the extraction point miles away. Yet when the child stepped forward, every soldier instinctively paused. She pointed toward the distant mountains, now illuminated by shafts of sunlight, piercing through clouds like blades of gold. "We must go there," she said simply. The commissar shook his head. "Orders are clear." Her eyes met his steady, unwavering, ancient. "Orders broke today." The soldiers shifted uneasily, torn between discipline and the strange certainty her words carried. It was the priest who knelt first. "Lead us," he whispered. And in that moment, the commissar understood. Command had already passed from him to a child shaped by something the Imperium had forgotten how to name. The journey was slow, each step accompanied by the weight of unspoken questions. The mountains loomed ever closer, their cliffs carved with symbols half erased by time, older than the Imperium, older than mankind's recorded memory. As they ascended, strange echoes drifted through the air, soft, melodic, impossibly familiar, lullabies, prayers, voices of children long turned to dust. The soldiers climbed in silence, their armor scraping stone, their breath thick with awe and fear. The commissar felt each echo like a knife twisting old wounds. Memories he had buried under years of war clawed their way back, his own childhood before the Scola, the sound of his mother's voice, the warmth of a home he barely remembered. He clenched his fists, struggling to remain the man duty had forged. But the mountain seemed intent on unraveling the soldier and revealing the child he once was. At the summit, they discovered an ancient structure carved directly into the rock, a cathedral without doors, open to the sky, its pillars shaped like reaching hands. Light pooled in its center, soft and shimmering, and within it lay a single stone slab engraved with symbols none could read, yet all felt they understood. The child stepped into the light, her small form illuminated like a living relic. "This is where they kept the first memories," she said softly. "Before we forgot ourselves." The commissar approached the edge of the glow, his heart hammering. "Who are they?" he demanded. She turned to him, tears shining in her eyes. "Us," she whispered. "Before war taught us to forget what it meant to be human." A hush fell. The soldiers lowered their weapons. Even the wind held its breath. And for the first time, the commissar felt the weight of a truth too vast for doctrine. The child placed her hand upon the slab. Light rippled outward in gentle waves, washing over every soldier. Visions filled their minds not of war, but of humanity's earliest dreams. Families gathered around firelight, children learning under open skies, worlds unscarred by bombardment, hope undiluted by fear. Some soldiers fell to their knees, sobbing. Others stared upward with trembling disbelief. The priest clutched his rosary to his chest, whispering prayers of gratitude or desperation. It was hard to tell which. The commissar felt a warmth he had not known since he was a boy, a warmth that burned not with pain, but with memory. When the light faded, the child sank to her knees exhausted. The commissar rushed to her side, catching her before she fell. She looked up at him with a weak smile. "We remember now." He held her tightly, feeling her heartbeat flutter like the last flutter of a candle flame. The soldiers constructed a cairn around the ancient slab, not as a shrine to worship, but as a promise, a promise that the memory awakened here would not be buried beneath propaganda or war. The commissar stood before the cairn, his expression hardened by resolve. "No report will speak of entities or miracles," he said. "But this we carry with us." The priest nodded solemnly. The soldiers, weary yet changed, began their descent. The child walked beside the commissar, her steps slow but steady. She no longer glowed with otherworldly power. She was simply a child again, fragile, breathing, alive, but her eyes still held galaxies. As they reached the base of the mountain, storm clouds parted, casting a final beam of soft golden light upon the ruins behind them. It felt like a farewell, or a warning, perhaps both. When extraction ships arrived, the commissar looked upon his regiment, diminished, scarred, forever altered. They boarded silently, leaving behind a battlefield that would never appear on official records. As the ship ascended, the child pressed her hand to the viewport, watching the world shrink. Her voice was soft, almost lost to the hum of engines. "Do you think they'll remember?" The commissar did not answer immediately. He stared at the drifting clouds, at the glow of sunrise over a land that had seen too much. "Memory is a war in its own right," he said. "And most battles are lost." She nodded, though her gaze remained hopeful. The priest approached, placing a gentle hand on both their shoulders. "Then we must fight it," he murmured. "Even if we are the last to do so." Long after the fleet burned through the atmosphere and vanished into the void, a single question lingered, etched into the hearts of all who survived. In a galaxy built on forgetting, what becomes of those who dare to remember? And another, quieter still, if humanity has lost its soul to survive, is survival still victory? The stars offered no answer. They merely watched, ancient and indifferent as they always had. And somewhere in the dark between them, a remembrancer's chronicle began to take shape, written not to glorify, but to endure, so that one day, when humanity stood at its final threshold, it might look back and understand the cost of its own becoming. If this story moved you, like, subscribe, share, and leave your thoughts in the comments below.